Hello buddies, I'm here again, and here we are trying to find out if Molten Strike is good in 2023, and the answer is yes and no. Um, it's still great with the Ancestral Call, or maybe in Awakened Ancestral Call, the clear speed is nuts, with Herald of Ash, some increased explosions. The single target is really great if we are lucky, because still Molten Strike is based on luck, and only averagely 60% of our projectiles hit the boss, as we have the initial spread. It was fixed. As you can see here, we tank really great. The only thing that can kill us in this case is physical damage, but as I've decided later, it's better to use the iron reflexes for additional armor in cope with our endurance charges. So yeah, we are afraid of strong degens and physical damage, but that's not pretty much the case. Pretty smooth mapping, and just a bit of random with the projectiles that can hit, or sometimes the skill just shreds, and sometimes we have some problems with standing still and waiting until our projectiles hit. We also can use nimis ring, but it's a bit another level of budget. So here is the variant without the nimis ring. Without it, we are at probably 10 divines budget, so it's maybe can be used as the league start. But if we push it further, we want to have the better jewels, and I'll explain that later. So we have here the low tier claw and dagger cluster jewel, which I crafted myself, but if we try to min-max it, each jewel will be around 15, maybe 20 divines, and the nimis is, I don't remember, maybe 20 divines too, and this is another level of budget, so we are not considering nimis here. And let's go to the build itself. As you can see in the bar below, we do not have too many buttons. We only press our totem at boss fights and our flammability curse, but you can also have the this curse on the ring, just to make it only 2-button build. As you can see, we are the Slayer. We utilize Frenzy and Endurance charges, and the Endurance charges help us prevent our physical damage. We also take the 20% more node for some damage, and the Leech Masteries, which provide us some defensive and offensive purposes for cannot be stunned, the bleeding immunity, and some increased Leech for our survivability. We take reservation efficiency nodes, not that many, but it's enough for this build. Some fire damage penetration, as we are using fire damage for our Molten Strike, the old school fire damage. Life nodes throughout the tree, which we can get. We do not need that much, because we use the Utelos Hunger chest, and it has the insane amount of base life. That's why even 100% increase on the tree leads us to over 6,000 life pool. And we also take the Brutal Restraint Timeless Jewel, and with that number, that gives us additional increased maximum life on the allocated nodes, and we're using Brutal Restraint for Balbala. Also, of course, as we're using Molten Strike, we use Point Blank, and the clusters for claw and dagger attacks deal increased damage as we use Varunastra in the build, and the variants for using Varunastra is sword and axe, cluster jewel, or the claw and dagger, and as it's considered the claw and the dagger simultaneously, we get 24% increased damage just for the basic cluster, and if we have the increased effect and also the Phenoblades nodes, we get even more damage, and we get the additional projectile. it's not that easy to craft, and the min-max jewels cost around 12, maybe 25 divines, but as you can see here, we do not have the min-maxed version. We just have 25 not 35 increased effect, do not have the additional attack speed node, and just have final blades. And if you have not enough currency, you can swap one cluster for this circle for claws, and get pretty the same amount of damage, but we lack one additional projectile, as as it was intended in the build to have 3 clusters. We use here Thread of Hope for some utility purposes, as we grab these 2 nodes for endurance and frenzy charge sustain while mapping. We also sustain frenzy charges from our mark on the tree to get frenzy charge when hitting the marked enemy. But this Thread of Hope also allows us to grab the Leech node and this Retaliation node, yeah, and this Leech one. Of course, well packed, because we are Slayer and we want our overleech and the leech itself to be doubled, and we leech around 3000 life per second, which is enough because we have huge defenses for the elemental damage. We stack frenzy charges, of course, as we have the Slayer, and the Brutal Restraint for Balbala, for some flask sustaining. It's not mandatory, but this Javel is good also for grabbing some increased life nodes, as you can see here, and here you can just take the Javel you need through the Timeless Javel calculator, as I've posted before. Some Crimson Jewels for utility purposes, for life, or maybe stats that you aren't able to get through the gear. And the main thing, the Otilos Hunger, the Insane Chest, I'll repeat it once more. We do not have that much increased life on the tree, and we still have over 5,000 life on level 90. Here is the variant for the level 90, and after that I'll show you the more min-maxed version that we are aiming to. For the main links, we use Molten Strike, elemental damage with attacks. Of course, we want to awaken elemental damage with attacks, and awakened Multi Strike, Conk Effect, Endurance Charge on melee stun. I have here, but I think it's not the best gem for maybe single boss fights, and I would swap it for either Inspiration. Fortify doesn't work. It gets Fortify, but it doesn't have the damage increase because it only affects the melee damage. And of course, Awaken Fire Penetration. Dark Ray Vectors with damage penetration, some pretty basic gloves which we can use with Sirenic Zark and Eater Worlds implicits for maybe attack speed, some accuracy, as we need to stack a lot of accuracy because we use the precise technique, and we need to have our accuracy much higher, not much higher, but higher than our actual life pool. And we have lots of life pool, so just attack speed, accuracy, some resistance that you lack, and we shouldn't have any life modifiers on our gear. That's why be careful, or Otilos Hunger won't work in this case. And the other gear, such as rings, is for utility purposes, maybe some fire damage to attacks, but accuracy and resistances, some intelligence, because we have problems with intelligence here. The Murderous Eye Jewels, or maybe Searching, would be good too for our Darkness Enthroned belt, because the increased added fire damage to attacks, to claw attacks, sword attacks, axe attacks, and all kind of melee weapons is scaled twice if you have the perfect rolled one, but you don't need the perfect rolled. For flasks, of course, Dying Sun, because we use projectiles, Silver Flask for slot attack speed, just movement speed flask, and I don't use here Iron Reflexes, but as far as I see while mapping and bossing, we need a bit more armor because endurance charges are not that effective. That's why I would have maybe one Jade Flask with increased evasion or increased armor, and take the Iron Reflexes to have around 10 to 12,000 armor. And of course, we want here the tattoo for +1 to frenzy charges, and we need to change our tree to go below here to iron reflexes. I've tried new Kiala's Blaster Shield. When it works really good, and the insane amount of tankiness that we have just amazes me. But this build seems to be a bit inconsistent because Molten Strike deals random damage because some of our projectiles cannot hit sometimes, and only in average 60% of our projectiles hit the boss, and the defenses are also based on random, and we are taking only 40% of the hits with 90% elemental resistances. Maybe I'll swap for the Darius' Courage and just take Petrified Blood Arrogance for our low life purposes, and have the max block on low life with the Darius' Courage. And we use also Eternal Damnation with allocated Whispers of Doom for additional curse, and with the amount of leech that we have, we cannot die, I think, to elemental damage. Of course, we cannot tank. It's not the face tanking build, but it helps to survive if you make some mistakes during boss fights. So the only thing that can kill us is physical damage. The Dual Iron Diadem with Molten Strike fires 2 additional projectiles. It's Herald of Ash, Anger, Enlighten, and Purity of Elements there. Also use Arctic Armor with Precision, some Blood Rage, the Ancestral Protector for attack speed, faster attacks, and Lip Slam for movement purposes. For mobility, Sniper's Mark on hit, pretty generic for any melee build. And Steel Skin, increased duration for our defenses, as we do not use that much armor. To talk more about the large cluster jewel, as you see here, we do not have the perfect one, and the purpose of this one is to have Fan of Blades for additional projectile, but we want to have 35% increased effect. And also the attack speed, but I crafted this myself. It's just alteration spamming while we have Fan of Blades, then Regal for increased effect, or maybe you grab it at once, but it's based on your luck. And at the beginning, if you want to league start, you just throw one or even all of these clusters and take any nodes on the tree with axe, mace, sword, increased damage, whatever you want for the purposes you need. Here is Min Max POB. This is the variant I was aimed to while building the build, and there are some minor adjustments which I've made through the prism of my experience during the gameplay. As you can see, the gear is pretty the same with some minor adjustments. With some changes to the gear, I maybe would change the new Kiala's Blaster Shield to the Darius' Courage for max block, because sometimes it's a bit inconsistent. And I've implemented here the Honored Tattoo for +1 to maximum frenzy charge, and as it's level 100, just additional nodes, which I haven't yet taken in the current actual build. And here is another cluster for additional projectile and some damage for our Varunastra instead of the claw mastery that we had there, and some tattoos for increased maximum life, as we have the great base through our new chest, the Otilo's Hunger. And also I've implemented the iron reflexes, because the evasion is not that good, because the endurance charges physical damage reduction doesn't work properly without some kind of additional armor that we could have with the iron reflexes, and with it we have additional 11,000 armor, which can help us. And that's all for today. Like, subscribe, leave your comments in the commentary section, support me with your activities on my channel, and see you next time. Goodbye.